another two of our amazing global leaders. That is Dr. Niamh Corduff from Australia and Michelle Franklin from the USA. Michelle and Niamh, two women I hugely admire. You are both key leaders in the aesthetic field, and I think you have influenced a lot of people, probably many more people than you actually know. And you inspire many more people, including myself, many more people than you know, I'm sure. And Michelle, as a senior vice president of Merz, hugely influential, but living in a very different world than Niamh and I in terms of moving in the corporate world, different challenges across the way. Compared to Niamh, plastic surgeon, traditionally very male-dominated, of course, environment. Again, shining and leading on a global stage, both of you leading on a global stage. And we're here partly to discuss interesting ideas, but we're also here to celebrate you, to say thanks, to say it's amazing. You have changed my life and a lot of people's lives. So this is a moment in time just to take that in and to acknowledge what you have done for our industry. And partly what we'd like to talk about is to think, how did you get here? Like Michelle, what did it take to get to your level in the corporate world?
Well, first of all, Kate, I have to say thank you so much for just that gift of your opening and acknowledging both Niamh and I. It definitely is a journey. Sometimes I think that there are two separate journeys in the world of physicians and the industry. And then other ways, I think that they're so similar in terms of the people, because when it comes down to it, it's all about people, right? And we all have similar goals. We want to succeed in whatever that looks like for each of us. So I'm just honored that I am a part of this little journey with both of you. And I think when you ask, has it taken for me to get here? I don't know. I feel like I'm learning every day. It's being open to challenges and opportunities, not saying no when you think that, am I sure I'm able to, do something that I've not done before? And what is that going to look like? And I think, that saying, feel the fear and do it anyway, is something that we women do all the time. We are definitely in those moments where we don't know, but we just keep moving forward. And I feel like that has been my journey. I just one step after the other, one opportunity after the other, and sometimes, quite honestly, making the opportunity. So, Niamh, I don't know, what has it been like for you?
It's been an interesting journey, and I think a lot of what you said rings true with me. It's when opportunities present themselves, it's grabbing them and giving it a go. And sometimes it feels like bungee jumping. You've got no idea what it's going to be like. Are you going to succeed? Are you going to manage it, or are you going to crash and burn? But I think it is very much grabbing life's opportunities when they appear and giving it your all and your best. Yeah. That's how I think I've got here. I was in plastic surgery, as you know, for a long time. And then I got asked to be on ASAP's council, and there'd never been a woman on the council. Okay, we need to have a voice. So I did it, and then eventually I got to be president, and I'm the only female that's ever been president of ASAP's council. And it was very different, very challenging in leadership role, because I have obviously a very different style than the classical male. And then obviously my term finished, and then I retired from actual surgery in 2015, finally, and transitioned over to aesthetics, which fitted very well. So again, grabbing opportunities when they came up. The opportunity came up. They were looking for somebody to do some training for Merz, especially from an anatomical point of view. And so I said, yep, give it a go. And it's just rolled on from there. And here I am.
So Neve, do you think that like at certain times, so there you are, quite concentratedly male environment, like so the only
Yeah.
female leader there
Yeah.
that has been, and
Yeah.
so did you feel that you had to change? Did you have to adapt your style? Did you change in order to be able to be successful in that environment?
I was aware of what was needed for a long time, long time to succeed in surgery. So I was the first ever female plastics trainee in Liverpool. That's where I started in plastics training. And I realized very early on there are a few principles. One, you completely separate your professional from your personal life. You have to have a persona that's professional and be aware of all the situations where the professional persona is seen. So relevant today, I mean, we didn't even have mobile phones in those days, right? But now it's especially relevant to social media. And I think that is a big important thing from Gravitas, not to mix the two. So I have a very private, personal life for which I'm very grateful. I've got a very close family. My husband supports me all the way through. My girls, who are now fully grown up, still support me. You've met them. We're very close. But that is one life, and my professional life is the other life. So that's one thing. I learned early on to dress professionally. I think that is actually very important. There's a traditional female role from the 1950s, 40s that still comes through, of the ditzy, giggly, light-headed female, right? And then the male traditional role, very corporate, very strong, very masculine. So I think we have, as a female leadership, especially coming into a male environment, you have to embrace, try and pick what it is that gives those males that leadership that comes with the maleness.
And you notice you doing it. Did you notice
Yeah,
you
yeah,
adopting those
absolutely.
strategies of dress
So,
and of separation of personal
yeah,
and that you
yeah,
did that to try and to in order to survive or be
survive it.
successful?
Yeah. So it's, power dressing. I mean, look you both, suits, jackets, it's corporate dressing. It's monochrome. It's no flowers, no frills, no ditzy. How you speak. I learned very early on that Margaret Thatcher thing, slow your voice, drop your voice, think about what you say. There's, especially in meetings, you have to sort of go, okay.
It's
It's,
so
there
interesting that
are,
you've really, you had that you consciously did that. Did you do it, Michelle? Did you? I mean, this is like, did you think about that as you move through?
Yeah, I think that there definitely is an element of self awareness, right, that comes into play in terms of you being in a corporate environment, you're interfacing with people from all around the world, and yet I still find myself in certain occasions, certainly with certain people, that you build relationships with that I do have a different way of interacting because I feel a level of comfort. I feel a level of trust that has been established between those relationships. And so I don't know that it's always the same. I think it's selective. And I would say, being a Black African American woman, we have been ingrained since you were a baby, a child, that you are going to be looked at and judged differently. So you need to make sure that you are setting yourself up for very high standards. Otherwise, you may be looked over. So I always felt that sense of, oh, I'm going to strive for excellence in everything that I do. And I'm going to make sure that as I put myself out there, I am going to, I think about my mother a lot in terms of making her proud and how she would feel. And so, yeah, I think in different situations, I probably adjust my style. So if I'm just sitting around with both of you, who I love and I adore and I trust, I can be freely me, for sure. Someone I don't know, I probably come across very differently.
I,
Yeah.
I, I think that's true, but um, sometimes I've looked at my colleagues who've been, they've maybe had too much to drink, they're partying, they've just completely let go at a professional event. And you always remember that. You
Yes.
just, and you
Yeah, so
just
you kind
think,
of never let
"Hmm,
your so in Eve always you're thinking, like
Yes.
you never let your armor down. Like part
yeah,
of your way of moving through that is always realizing that you have, that you're in a professional environment and seems to be very different, and you're really watching that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think males get away with it. If they'd had got drunk and partied and come back the next day, there's that attitude of forgiveness, ah ha ha. But if a female does it, it's a black mark still.
And it's so interesting, and we're going to talk more about it, obviously, about this ideas of, what you talk about, like gravitas, like what does that
Yeah,
really mean? Why do we have it? So, but it's interesting to see that you have anyway adopted strategies. And I remember specifically the environment of all male plastic surgeons. Like there is something special, not about plastic surgeons particularly, but all male groups of plastic surgeons
yeah,
which have like we talked about before, like on the podium, like you're up there, you do your lecture, like it's our colleague, but we're going to take you down afterwards. Or
yeah,
like I remember I was in this group it was quite early on for me. It was a group of Belgian plastic surgeons and very high up, lovely people. But they started off, like I came into the room and they were like, oh yeah, this is the early days of aesthetics, right? So they didn't believe any of it practically. So do you know what I mean? They weren't even believing in fillers or anything like that at all, nothing. And so they all started off, I saw them all leaning back like this, like just totally leaning back. And so I was like, everything about their body language was like, who is this little girl?
mm,
Like, I even know where she comes from and what she does. So I was like, I still had a lot of experience under my belt. And I started off with, I'm so sorry if I just tell you things that you already know. And then I told them 20 things they 100% didn't know. Like 100%. And I told
yeah,
them really fast in the opposite way that I would have done with anyone else. The opposite way to pacing it out and etc. It wasn't about that. And I watched their body language go from here to like up to like reaching for their bags, for their pens. And eventually I had them move like that. And I was like, okay, we're ready. In my mind, I was like, okay, we're ready now. But it was really like there was no option but to come in like that and get them and watch them to come to that point where it was like they leaned in. and now we can begin. Do you know what I mean? In a way I would never have done in any other environment. It was an instinctive strategy, sort of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think when you think about strategies and when you're younger, right? And younger in your career, and I recall, to your point, Neve, when you're out and you're with a group of people professionally, but it's social. And, the men, they're taking shots and they're telling the women here have shots. And I remember, I guess, other women that were with me, I said, they're taking shots of vodka. We're just going to use water, right? This is going to be our strategy. We will take the shot of water. And now I look back and I'm like, why did I even feel compelled to actually even do that? Right?
Yeah. Never mind about the water. Yeah, of course. Yes. I don't know why I did. Yeah, of course. Why did I not think of that? Of course. Why would you just not say no?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, I think obviously we learn as we develop and grow, but it's a strategy, right? It's an ultimate strategy.
And I feel like both of you also have that experience then, that through the environments that you moved through as well, specifically, that you had the idea that you had to be better and more and deliver additional than your male counterparts coming into that. Did you feel like that? You had to do extra to get there?
I'm not so sure I feel I had to do extra work, because they all work very hard to get to where they are. I think it's just delivering it differently, like you did, Kate. You have to establish that you know your stuff, whereas guys tend not to have to establish that in the beginning, and you did that very clearly. And I think it's interesting. We have a balance between a femininity and the skills that we have as a female, which tends to be more empathetic, listening. We don't have an aggression or such a competitive edge, an ego, to the same extent. And I think that's one of the big differentiators. Sorry, there's an echo, struggling with it. But we do, even though we have gravitas, we want to have that respect, there are things that I believe we do better.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because we're talking about leadership, aren't we? There's an assumption that and we talk about gravitas. So then when you think about the word gravitas, like Michelle, what gravitas? You hear that word, what does that mean to you? Who is that person who embodies gravitas?
Yeah, I think, when I initially think about that, it is kind of a male dominant type figure, exudes a lot of authority and even a bit of sternness. But then when I think about that, it's like I was giving it thought in reference to this topic, and it is the ability to understand yourself and be really comfortable and confident in your values and what you believe and how you display that in a way that is not off-putting to someone else, but you get to stand in your own strength, right? That is a sense of gravitas that says, yes, that person, they know who they are and what they contribute to the world.
Yeah, that's right. So it's the opposite to this, isn't it? Where it's Neve, you talked about this kind of the image of someone who's kowtowing or moving or fluttering around or being moved by the other people. Instead, they are there, aren't they? And they move others. They influence others. This goes out the way, or as you say, Michelle, it's like the person is who they are. It's not dependent on what else is necessarily on people that are around them. They get people to come around them.
Yeah. My vision was, I always looked and think of as Maggie Thatcher. You know,
Right, yeah.
that's the ultimate gravitas, but she was a very masculine figure. And I see in it, you know, running the parliament and with a handbag bashing over the heads of the ministers. And that's not who I want to be. I want to be in that room, confident in my own self and my own beliefs. So I've been in a situation where I feel strongly about certain thing, and it's
You,
about
Neve, never. You have a
I
strong
know,
opinion and you
strongly.
say that? No.
you know, but maybe I need to back off a bit. But
No,
you know,
no,
just
no.
staying very true. If you believe that is the right thing to do, and that's ethically right at the bottom line, then you have to stick to your guns. Even if every single person in the room is saying, that's rubbish, you know, you can listen to them and we can negotiate. And sure, listen and be prepared to change. But don't feel just because everybody else is saying no, 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 that you just have to keep quiet.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I think what happens is often too many times uh, women are quiet. And I know in the corporate world sometimes, when I even think about our industry, which is so interesting, where predominantly the consumers of our products are females, right?
Mm.
Females. But if you look at the companies that are making the products, that are, you know, manufacturing, selling these products, a lot of the leadership at the top tends to be males. And they're making decisions for females. And so I think that the more females are able to sit at the table and help to make some of those decisions that are based off of how a woman feels and how they want to be represented and how, you know, we can embrace showing up for them, I think is going to make a powerful difference in this industry, for sure.
100%. And I think what's happening is there's lots of research to back that up now. Like now they show that the more that in executive positions, when you get companies, if you start to increase female participation in those top positions, when you start to hit like about 30%, what they find is those companies become much more profitable. Which is it's a kind of a new paradigm in what is success. Because for me as well, we think about gravitas, it's like, who is the person with gravitas? Yeah, it's like, well, if it's a female, it would be a male version, it would be a female version of a male gravitas, right? So that would be the Margaret Thatcher. Or who is that person? That is someone who is believed. If they say it, it's believed. And their position gives them it makes people think that they are right. So when they say it, people will think that person has wisdom and knowledge. So their posturing, their voice, the way they act makes people believe that they know better. So, but in a way, I think that becomes from where that word comes from initially in the Romans, which is like this idea that this is male authority. This is like that person understands. When in actual fact, if you look at styles of leadership which are becoming more successful, or modern styles of leadership for everyone, then listening, number one, like rather than saying, like the other ones is culture. There's another piece of information in the research for this, which I thought was super interesting, that now CEOs, 71% of them now say that culture is one of the most important things in corporations. This is up 44% since last year. Like the world is changing in terms of who is actually successful in making things happen and driving things forward. It's not necessarily the bomb, all the imagery that thinks, okay, if I say it, then it's going to be true.
Yeah. Well, even with you as physicians in your clinics and practices, you are creating a culture with your teams. And that's critically important in terms of when you think about retention and long term, right? Employees, they want to be in a culture where it's thriving, developing, they're a part of making decisions, they're a part of that team, they're being incentivized. All those things are the same things on the corporate side that is important from a cultural standpoint. So, yeah, I think the research is definitely bearing out that you have to invest in what you want your culture to stand for sure.
Yeah, and that's going to make it more successful. But even in the world of the physicians and so global KOLs or global aesthetic leaders, and they have this kind of everybody who is at that level, the reality, and we've talked about this all the way through our series, is that real leaders are so multi-talented and have achieved on multi-different levels. So as in publications, really super important. Publications that change the direction of where we're going is, I think, one really important that all global leaders, they already have. Like the ability to hold and speak from the stage and convince other people of their point of view, like I've seen you do many times, Neve, as well. And the fact that your ability to be able to teach people and to have done that year after year after year after year. And so, but in terms of navigating that world, which you've done over so many years, do you think that, and you're looking at young women, and do you think that the way that so you've described a way which is like navigating actually a very male environment. Now as people are coming up, do you think that men are still winning in that? Do you think that they're given more gravitas than women amongst physicians in that field?
I think women physicians hold their own in aesthetics, in medical aesthetics. You get it. It's interesting. There's a couple of egos up there on stage, but they're getting less. It's a different world where if you go to a surgical conference, it's still the old school. So I will be at ISAPS in Colombia this year, and that's totally different environment, very different.
So that's interesting. So actually, it's more like corporate, isn't it, Michelle? So in fact, but why is that? Like, why are those like big corporation, corporate America, like mostly run by men, plastic surgeons? Why are those environments more male dominated?
I think because we let it be. I think when we start stepping in and saying, hey, we want to actually be in a position, and oftentimes women have to ask for the promotion. They have to ask to be able to be elevated. And I think that we have to get more confident in being able to do that because otherwise it won't happen. It's
interesting, isn't it? It's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a kind of fable that men will put themselves forward. They say it's maybe the statistics are not necessarily true, but they say it's like a man will put himself forward with 60% of the experience needed, while a woman would wait till she had 100% before putting herself forward.
Right.
I think that's true.
And then still questioning herself as to whether she's going to be able to be successful in the role.
Yeah. I think that's very true. But I think that it's a lot more that we have to address. And that is the biological role for somebody who wants to be a mum as well, and childbirth. That is one of the biggest problems we need to address. I think from a medicine point of view and surgical training point of view, we've had a change with some of the universities, medical schools in Australia, where they're now following the American system where they have to have a double degree. So they start with one and then switch over to medicine, which gives them another 2 years, 3 years before they actually start their medical career. And that biological clock is ticking. And having kids when you're in training is a nightmare because there's no 9 to 5. You're on call on paper, once every few nights. But in reality, in specialist training, you have to be on the ward at 7, maybe 8, early hours, very late finishing. You're expected to go in at weekends, Saturday morning ward rounds when the kids do sport. I think, is a
Is that what you did?
fundamental
When
thing.
did you have your children? So, Neve, when did you have your children? Did you have them after training or did you have your
After
girls
training. Yeah.
after training? Yeah.
And
So
I
you're
had,
saying that nowadays that would have to be pushed on.
yeah. Or they have their kids in training, and many are dropping out. It's really sad to see because doing that juggling act, and if they've got a husband who's also trying to develop a career, and then they can get sent to different states for training. It's a big problem that we need to address to support women and help them get through that stage of career. And whether it needs childcare within the corporate structure, within the building, or within hospitals, I think that's one of the biggest things that we could do is have on-site childcare, after school childcare within the workplace would help heaps, but that's one of the biggest blocks. And the men know that they might have to cover if the kid's sick. And that is a big negative. And really, they never say it unless they've, let slip later. But that's one of the biggest reasons they're reluctant to promote and employ females in leadership positions or bring them up through it and in surgery because they fear that they're going to have to cover.
But I think that goes back to, again, the culture, right, that
Yeah.
you're trying to create. And so if you're creating a culture that is inclusive and it feels inclusive, then you have to create policies and innovative ways to take care of the needs of the whole
Yeah.
versus focusing on, the few. So
Yeah.
you got to start back at the beginning and then, collectively try to work together. I think, in our industry, particularly here at Merz Aesthetics, it is something that's really important is employee feedback, right? You have to continually have feedback to meet the needs of many people. And, the concept, and I don't know, Kate, if you wanted to bring it up, but this concept about life balance and creating life balance, I don't know that there's ever a time where there's 50% balance professional and 50%, personal, and it's all in balance. I personally didn't find that in my life or career.
But what's interesting though, if you look at everyone who's kind of in leadership positions, the point where they hit it, like the gravitas moment, the moment when they really have done their time and they hit the level where they are true leaders of that field in that area, as you have, like that is timed compared to lots of different things. So people have had their children earlier and then they come to it a bit later, or they might do it first and then have their children. Like, so it's trying to do it all, and me, of course, coming to motherhood later, I honestly now have a completely different respect and understanding to what other people, other women and mothers have gone through. And you realize that you just suddenly you're enter a world where something else is more important, and you will always do that. And especially when they're at certain ages. So and it's somehow there's a myth that somehow maybe you can hit that level of focus. Maybe it's important to understand that actually there are times when you have to protect sometime, and you cannot necessarily go 100% and do those early years in terms of establishing, because I think establishing your career and establishing yourself to a leader position is very different than maintaining it or moving on. So maybe there's just is there a lie that is there a thing where we just don't really think about it strategically in terms of how we build it up?
It's interesting. I noticed that when I'm on it with Kay Wells, there's a few of us women who've come to it later in life. So we've had our kids, and then we can start publishing and focusing more on getting into that leadership position, writing papers, doing academics, where I often advise trainees in surgery who are coming through and want kids. And I say to them, let the academics go for the moment, focus on doing your surgical training, have your kids. You can come to that later, whereas the guys tend to go straight through. But I said, there's no problem. And it gives you something different for later on down the line.
But that's so valuable. Do you know what I mean? Those insights where people can say, actually, the road is quite long. You don't necessarily have to be pressured to hit I remember at one point I was realizing if I was going to do a lot of global teaching and traveling that much, that if I was at the same time to have a very large clinic, that I was just going to do neither of them well. So I was like, I will have a smaller clinic and focus on my patients, but not try and have lots and lots of staff. So do my clinic and be 50% in my clinic, but not try to run a massive business on that side. But I was going to make sure that my focus would be on my teaching and to be traveling and try to understand the expertise and et cetera, et cetera. And then you can go back and then you build up the other part of it, same thing. Like you can go and you don't necessarily have to be hitting all of the areas. And sometimes, in fact, it's important not to try and be 100% on everything. Otherwise, people they kind of fail. They can't. It's not possible. No. Yeah.
So the journey is really long, right? If we're fortunate to have long life, we've got a long journey, and we get to learn so much along the way. And I think the opportunity to sit with you and Neve today, just exploring, is so much fun and so beneficial to me personally. So thank you so much, Kate, for doing this. Really.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And when we think about gravitas and female gravitas, like we're talking about, like both of you have this exactly what you described, like that you are authentic, you stand your ground, you're authentic, and you pull people around you. And I think that moment to be able to say that we as women can create our own paradigm and our own concept of gravitas and leadership, and that can be in our own way. It can include collaboration, care for others, listening for others, but with absolute strength and with absolute integrity and without changing how we move. And I think that's something that Michelle, that the women's leaders we're going to focus on that more coming up, aren't we?
Yes, yes, I'm so excited about what's to come from this.
We're all about the gravitas.
All of it. Love you so much. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Kate.
you
Yeah.
so much,
Really
Michelle and Marie.
amazing.
Thanks.
Amazing.
Thank you.